The 1980s. Wow. It was a time of vibrant culture, groundbreaking innovation, and unforgettable fashion. There's something about the era that draws us in and captures our hearts. But what is it that we miss the most from the 1980s? To start out, let's talk about fashion in the 1980s. The decade was marked by bold colors, exaggerated silhouettes, and daring styles. It was a time when people were not afraid to express themselves through their clothing. Women wore power suits with shoulder pads, high-waisted pants, and oversized blazers, while men sported parachute pants, members-only jackets, and Ray-Ban sunglasses. One of the most iconic fashion trends of the 80s was the introduction of leg warmers, which were originally worn by dancers, but quickly became a fashion staple. And let's not forget about the rise of the fitness culture, which inspired people to wear brightly colored leotards, sweatbands, and headbands. In addition to clothing, accessories played a big role in 80s fashion. Big hair, hoop earrings, neon-colored bracelets, they were all the rage. Many of the trends from that time are still being reimagined and incorporated into modern fashion today. But it wasn't all about the glitz and the glamour. The 80s were also a decade of innovation. The personal computer was introduced, and with it, a revolution in the way we work and communicate. We can thank Apple's Macintosh for making computers more accessible to the masses. And who could forget the Sony Walkman? This portable cassette player changed the way we listened to music forever. The decade was really a turning point for the tech industry. For instance, the first commercially available mobile phone, the Motorola Dynatac, was introduced in 1983. It was an expensive luxury item, but it paved the way for the modern smartphone we know today. And the 80s weren't just about gadgets. It was also a time of innovation in the gaming industry. Who can forget the Nintendo Entertainment System and how it changed the way we play video games forever? It introduced us to iconic characters like Mario and Zelda, and it created a whole new industry that's still thriving today. And how about some of those iconic 80s toys? Remember the Rubik's Cube? That colorful little devil that would drive everybody crazy? And who could forget Cabbage Patch Kids? Those dolls were so popular, people would literally fight over them in the stores. And of course, we can't leave out Transformers. Robots in disguise? Yes, please. How about sports in the 1980s? The decade was full of incredible moments and unforgettable athletes. It was the era of Michael Jordan. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird dominated the basketball court and created one of the most intense rivalries in sports history. Football also was exploding, with iconic moments like the catch from Joe Montana to Dwight Clark and the legendary Super Bowl Shuffle by the Chicago Bears. The 1980s also was a time of change in sports. With the introduction of new leagues and formats, the first ever WrestleMania took place in 1985, changing the face of professional wrestling forever. The 80s laid the foundation for the sports we love today, and we can't help but feel a sense of nostalgia when we look back at the great moments from that time. The 80s gave birth to some of the most memorable tunes in history. From Michael Jackson's Thriller to Madonna's Like a Virgin, the music scene was electric. But did you know that the 80s also saw the rise of hip-hop? Artists like Run DMC and LL Cool J paved the way for a genre that would go on to dominate the music industry. It's no wonder that we still blast a lot of these tunes when we get together for parties and concerts today. Speaking of parties, let's talk about the nightlife of the 1980s. Clubs were where it was at, and people dressed to impress. Disco balls, neon lights, fog machines created an atmosphere of pure fun. And let's not forget about the iconic dance moves like the moonwalk and the electric slide. Speaking of iconic, how about those 80s TV shows? The era gave us an array of unforgettable series that became cultural touchstones. Shows like The Cosby Show brought humor and warmth to our screens, while Miami Vice introduced us to a world of stylish detectives and pulsating soundtracks. And who can forget Knight Rider with his talking car Kit, or the sci-fi wonder of The Twilight Zone when it was rebooted. The action-packed A-Team brought thrilling adventures and unforgettable characters. And who could resist the charm of the Golden Girls and their hilarious antics? The 80s television landscape offered a diverse range of genres, from heartwarming family sitcoms to gripping crime dramas. These shows not only entertained us, but also reflected the spirit of the decade, capturing its essence and providing a window into the cultural fabric of that time. And the movies. The 80s produced some of the most iconic films in history, from The Breakfast Club to Back to the Future. These movies have stood the test of time. And let's not forget about the rise of action movies and blockbusters like Die Hard and Indiana Jones. The culture of the 1980s was marked by an unapologetic attitude of excess and extravagance. It was a time of big hair, big personalities, and even bigger dreams. People were obsessed with wealth and success, and the rise of the yuppie culture reflected this mentality. The 80s was also a time of political and social change, with the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 signaling the end of the Cold War and the beginning of a new era. Despite the challenges of the time, the 1980s remain a nostalgic and influential decade in our minds, with its bold and unapologetic attitude still inspiring people today. What are your favorite memories from the 1980s? We'd love to read about them in the comments below. Thanks for watching Memory Mountain. If you enjoyed this video, please click to subscribe to our channel and hit that thumbs up button. Be sure to tap the notification bell so you'll be one of the first to know when we post our next story looking back over the landscape of Americana.